Welcome to the Expert Speaker Podcast. We are here with Matthew Britt from Food Forest Abundance. Welcome, Matthew.
Hey, Majeed, great to see you again, my friend. I am grateful to be here, grateful for our friendship, and love the laughs I got to share with you last night at your first stand-up comedy appearance.
Thank you for showing up as you always do, Matthew. I don't know if you remember this, but one of the first times, maybe the first time we ever sat down together, we sat for a meal at a place called Olga's Bakery in the Glebe in Ottawa. And you ordered a salad with meats. And we were talking about this product you had called Body by Vi, and it was like a protein shake. And you said something I never forgot. I said, I don't know what's in that protein shake. And you pointed to what I was eating. I can't remember what I was eating, but I remember what you were eating, a salad. And you said, well, you don't know what's in that either. And I was like, you're right. For some reason, I was so suspicious of a protein shake, but I was not suspicious of the food I had no idea I was putting in my mouth. That was like 15 years ago. Today, we're talking about food. We're talking about growing your own food, self-sufficiency with food. So tell us, what is a food forest?
First of all, great question. Food forest is a thoughtfully designed edible landscape that utilizes a science called permaculture, permanent agriculture, to mimic nature and a natural ecosystem. It's using native edible perennial plants. It's caring for the soil in a much different way. And as mentioned, it's mimicking the way nature functions already to produce an abundance of food in a small space and really any size that once planted begins to and get established begins to be self-regulating. So something that you don't need to be pouring all of your hard-earned time, energy, and resources into to have it be producing food for you.
So this sounds like a smart farm. It's like food is growing on your land, but you're not necessarily fertilizing and tilling and weeding and so much management. It's just well designed so that it's growing with minimal intervention. Is that right?
Yes, it is working with nature's brilliance. So if you want to consider a smart farm working with the brilliance of Mother Nature, that is exactly what we're doing.
Well, growing up as a teenager, my first job was mowing lawns. And I always looked at those green grasses like money makers because they always got to get mowed. And I remember the landscaping companies would come by with these like toxic, hazardous material gas masks and gloves, and they would spray the lawns. And then they would put a sign, do not touch this lawn for however many days because it's poisonous. And even as a teenager, I remember thinking, wow, they're just like, homeowners are paying for poison to be poured on their lawn to produce a plant that is not edible, requires constant maintenance. And growing up, I never saw someone growing food on their front lawn. The only time I ever saw food growing was in the backyard. And just on the internet, I still haven't even seen here in Canada. I've only on the internet, I see pictures of gardens in the front yard, and the tagline is like, this is an act of rebellion because it's like socially unacceptable to be growing food on your front yard. What do you make of all that?
I think it's hilarious and we've been fooled into growing something that doesn't want to be there, poisoning it, and then investing our time, energy, and resources into caring for it on a week-to-week basis as we either hire the neighbor, get out there and cut it, or we invest the time ourselves to do it. And it literally produces no value. From my understanding, the lawn used to be something only available to the kings and queens because they had people who would care for it. So they had these lush lawns, but everybody else grew food. And then for some reason, we got this all mixed up and decided we all need to have a lawn too. We have this belief that the lawn is part of the foundation for our enslavement. essentially, because now we're getting our food produced hundreds, thousands of miles away. That food is grown in a situation where that farmer is fighting nature every step of the way. Those poisons and chemicals you talk about are being sprayed all over that food to try to control everything else that is in that environment. The plant itself has to have been genetically modified to withstand this poison and be the only thing that actually lives there. And then we consume that stuff instead of producing it right at our home and having that be poison free in a healthy ecosystem where, if you look at the forest, no one's out there caring for that on a day-to-day basis, but it's growing back every single year, more and more lush. The soil is very healthy. It has a healthy microbiome. And the healthier that soil is, the healthier the plants are. The healthier the plants are, the healthier the food is. And that ties into how healthy we are. And it's not as complicated as we've been led to believe. See, we think that it's hard work or that we don't have a green thumb. I can't grow food. These are common statements that people say. And the reality is, I don't grow food either. Nature grows food. Nature will do this naturally if we just provide the ideal environment for it to do so. And that doesn't include poison. It doesn't include trying to control every aspect of it. Instead, let's work with things that want to be here, the local native plants. Let's establish them in a system of layered production. So we have in that same space, let's call it even a quarter acre, we're able to grow significantly more stuff in there because we're working in 7 layers of production as opposed to a monoculture single row of production. And because we structure it in a very sound way, it will self-regulate. It will fertilize itself as leaves fall every fall and they go onto the soil. The microbiome and the fungus and the things that are down there, all the little critters, break that food down, creating a healthy, it's called a soil food web. Creating that healthy soil food web, which produces those healthier plants, healthier food, healthier human. That you can go and you pick that food, it's got life force energy still in it. It hasn't sat on a train to a boat to another bus or to a transport to your grocery store before you finally get it 2 months later. This is taken from the plant, brought into your house, cleaned, eaten. You've got that life force energy in there. So it's very powerful what can happen in a very short period of time when people just switch their paradigm to empowering themselves.
So you're working with a company called Food Forest Abundance, and they design and install these food forests. What kind of clients are you finding that are wanting this installed in their homes?
So I've been speaking with all kinds of entrepreneurs, business owners, schools, churches. Our target market started with the suburban backyard, but very quickly we realized that there's a certain demographic of person, at least right now, because this stuff is very new, that it's more accessible to. And they think a little bit differently. They're often more around, how can I make my money work for me? Buying assets. And we're finding it's a right now a wealthier client, someone who's got the financial resources to afford a design, and they're not thinking about it as a liability. They're thinking about this investment is going to be a asset that will produce value for my family. One of the women that I was speaking with a few days ago, she owns a very large business in Virginia, and she's working at selling her business. She's very aware that our food system is currently being poisoned. She's very aware that there's a lot of manipulation of the population through media and big pharma. and she's looking for a way to create self-sufficiency. So she's intending to move out of the city, get herself a 10 plus acre piece of land, and she wants to invest the resources that she has into building not only a food forest on her property, but also set herself up with her own energy production systems, her own water production systems, and even bring in healing so she can manage her own health from her own property and care for herself in a much better way.
Yeah, I've always thought that wealthy people, they know the secret that true wealth is health. And Matthew, you and I live in Canada, and we have what's called universal healthcare or free healthcare. But in my experience, you're not exactly getting the top of the line wellness technology, probably getting some pill. So, what are some of the things you notice as you're talking to wealthy people who are prioritizing health? They're bringing food in to their home on their land so they don't have to have the poison stuff that's been sitting in a truck for 2 months. But what are some of the other things you're seeing? Like, are you seeing people build water systems, or what other kind of health or self-sufficiency systems are you seeing wealthy people install?
You know, you make a great point there. Without our health, we really have nothing, right? So many things are very important until the one thing that matters most is compromised, which is our health. Then the only thing that matters is our health. So being proactive is definitely something I've noticed with people who are just wealthier in financial terms, but also seem to have a richer life in general. They prioritize their health, and they're realizing this the sickness business, what we currently call our healthcare industry, is really a sickness industry. We're not going there until we're sick. We're not going to the doctor until we're sick. But where's the proactive side of that? Well, that's taking it into your own hands. That is producing your own food that you know is not having any of the poisons on it. It is, yes, getting into the water systems, putting things in place to ensure that they have clean air in their house. They're often using high technology to filter the air in the home. They're also making choices around their activity on a day-to-day basis. They're choosing to get sunshine. They're choosing to go to a gym. They're hiring personal trainers. They're taking proactive measures. Choosing not to eat out at restaurants is a big one because they can't control what's being prepared for them by a chef. And obviously, we're making generalizations here, but being aware of all of the different places that chemicals are seeping into your body is very important. And the better choices you make around this, the more proactive you are in taking action towards controlling what you can control, the more likely you are to extend your life through good food, good water, good air that you're breathing, and activity to continue to move your body and keep it supple.
What do you see in the future of this? Is this going to be common? Like, everyone's going to have a food forest? Is this the kind of thing that technology is bringing? I remember reading long time ago, that one day we'll go to the grocery store and we'll pick the fruit off of a tree in the grocery store. Which, now that I say it out loud, it's kind of silly. Why not have the tree in your own backyard? What do you think's the future of all this?
Well, I think it's a something we're going back to. This isn't new. Everybody used to grow food. In some capacity, we had some food production system on our properties, and we need a refresher on that. So I do see a future where people are growing food. I think the important distinction now or differentiator will be, are we growing annual gardens where every single spring we have to get out there and replant this food? Or are we going to be working a little differently and utilizing things that grow back every year, the perennial plant? Now we can intermix, obviously, some of this annual crop in there, but if we utilize perennial plants, the plant does so much more of the work. It comes back year over year without me having to go plant it again. And it will produce, you talk about an asset, a wealthy person always is thinking about how do I acquire more assets? Well, if you invest, say, $100 into a fruit tree, that fruit tree could be producing you food for decades, hundreds of pounds of food a year for decades, could even be centuries, depending on the type of plant that it is. That's an incredible return on that investment. That's how these wealthy people are thinking today. And it's going to permeate through all of society, I think, as we're continuing to see food supply chain breakdowns, more and more people realizing every day that their food system is currently broken, that it's very controlled by a small group of people, that there's a lot of chemicals being utilized in our food system that are harming us, not helping us.
So speaking of food supply chain breakdown, we were in Canada during the pandemic and we heard a lot of scary things here and there. I didn't know, I looked in my cupboard. I said, okay, I got a couple cans of beans. And I went out to the grocery store and I bought one of those big jugs of water, like the 10-gallon. And then I thought to myself, all right, this is going to last me like 2 days.
Yep.
So that was the first time I actually really contemplated my own vulnerability. And then I remember at one point there was like a traffic jam in the Suez Canal. I don't know where the Suez Canal is, but I saw it on the news. And then they were saying, this is going to back everything up and nothing's going to get to the grocery stores. So I can't say I really know how the supply chain works, but perhaps you could educate me a little bit what that means when we say the supply chain is compromised. And, I've now contemplated for the first time in my life, like, oh, it's possible that our grocery stores could be completely wiped out for weeks or more. And who knows how long our food supply would last, and who knows how friendly or unfriendly our neighbors might become when the grocery stores are empty. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, as you have saw on the news, there's war taking place in numerous countries right now. And an average grocery store has about 3 days worth of food in it. And if people start to panic, that's probably less. And when you're out of food, you become desperate. And when you're desperate, you do desperate things. And that's a scary thought. I hope it never gets that way. I hope everything we talk about here from a what could happen never comes true. But the reality is, it's come true in other countries. It may have not come true here for a long time, but it has definitely come true in other places. And when that comes true, then what do you do? And most people don't think about that because it's so simple for us to conveniently hop into our car, drive over to the grocery store, and get that thing that you want that's not in season, that came from 3,000 miles away, and it tastes great. However, if a supply chain issue happens, which, by the way, our global supply chain currently is really secured by the United States. The US military, particularly the Navy, secures that global supply chain. You don't really see big shipping tankers being taken down by terrorists.
Right.
It's starting to happen, though. There has been issues in the Middle East right now where certain organizations are targeting shipping vessels. But what happens if that becomes more common? What happens if the United States, global superpower, no longer is the global superpower and the
Mm-hmm.
shipping infrastructure is no longer secured the way it is now? And these things are all like, that could never happen. Has it happened before? Have the most powerful empires in history changed? They have. And if they have, well, we're naive to believe that it can't happen now.
Not only have they fallen, it's a predictable cycle. There's a great I saw this YouTube series summarizing a book by Ray Dalio where he's looking at the predictable fall of the United States and the predictable rise of, it appears to be, China.
Yes,
Are you talking about China much? Or thinking about China much when you're in these conversations?
absolutely. It's a lot of our food today comes from China. Go look at any garlic cloves in most grocery stores today, and they're not saying grown in Ontario, even though it grows here. Most of them are saying made or grown in China.
Mm-hmm.
That's just one example. And how far away is China? And why is our food coming from there? Right? Why isn't it all coming from local production? Well, it's because we've got our taste buds so used to it's the middle of winter, but I need a ripe banana, right?
Right.
We've completely changed our systems around food consumption and our health, our own personal health systems. If you lived in Canada 100 years ago, you weren't necessarily having an avocado in the middle of December because they weren't in season here and they actually don't even grow here. So we probably weren't even eating them at all. Now, now we have all of those things at the snap of a finger, anytime. So what we're realizing is that what other people are doing is never really about making sure you're at your best. It's always to ensure that they're at their best. So if the Chinese are producing all kinds of things that we're consuming, are they doing it because they want us to be at their best, or are they doing it to make money for their own country? And if that's the reality, if the case is they're doing it for their benefit and they're not really, what are their environmental protections? What are their limits on what chemicals can be sprayed on what stuff, right? Are they being truthful in telling us what they're utilizing, right? Are the Canadian Inspection Agency over there making sure they're not spraying this, but they are spraying that? I doubt it.
Are there any cultures or countries that you know of that are practicing these sustainable farming methods at the hyper local level of the individual home, the individual growing his or her own food? Where are you seeing it actually in practice most?
Well, more often than not, it's lower income countries where the population is more dependent on themselves and less dependent on their systems. That's where I see a lot of people taking the production of their food into their own backyards.
Mhm.
Definitely much more common. I work with somebody in Kenya, and he is running a permaculture institute there, and he's helping communities all over the country growing their own food. He is intent on teaching everybody that nature is abundant and it's free. And once you get these things established, they are food production systems that can feed communities. The amazing thing about all of this is that every single food forest naturally becomes a nursery. Because when you understand how to propagate new plants, you can prune a tree, take that branch, and if you do it the right way, that becomes a new tree. Right? Here's another simple analogy. You can count the seeds in an apple, but you cannot count the apples in a seed. Every single apple tree produces apples that produces seeds. It doesn't take long to see there's a massive abundance in nature.
Mhm.
But we've been fooled to believe it's scarce and it's hard and we can't do it. When the exact opposite is 100% true.
So, Matthew, what should people do if they want to learn more about your company, Food Forest Abundance, or if they want to get started getting working with Food Forest Abundance to design the food forest on their home? Where should they go?
Foodforestabundance.com. Foodforestabundance.com is a great place to start. There's a number of resources there. One of the best things that you can do for yourself is discover what's true. Discover what's true. And by what I mean by that is don't make an assumption about what's possible on your property or what you need to do. If you actually reach out to us through our website, there's a link where you can schedule a 30-minute conversation with a permaculture designer. So you can meet with somebody from our team, zero cost to you. You can go through this 30-minute, we call them a strategy session, ask all kinds of questions about your property, what's possible there for your particular climate zone, your particular local native plants that can be produced on that property. and they'll provide you all kinds of details and resources to help you make a good decision on if or if not this is something that's right for you and your family. So start off with that. That's the place to go. Go to foodforestabundance.com, book yourself a 30-minute strategy session, meet with a permaculture designer. No obligation, no cost to you other than your time to discover what's possible for you and your own property.
Fantastic. Matthew Britt, foodforestabundance.com. Thank you very much. And I've learned about today the poison in the food, the supply chain of the food, talked a little bit about self-sufficiency. And so the future is bright for people who are taking food into their own backyard. And what an exciting time to be alive, huh, Matthew?
I agree. It very much is. We are at I think, a precipice, a turning point or an inflection point, if you will, where abundance really is becoming unlocked for everybody. It already exists, but we've been led to believe there's scarcity in so many places. And I believe the exact opposite is true, and that we are at a turning point where this stuff is really going to become the forefront of people's lives, and we're going to ultimately level up humanity in a big way.
Well, thank you for sharing your wisdom here today, Matthew. Appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you too. Have an amazing day.
Thank you for listening to the Expert Speaker Podcast. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and leave us a rating so that more people can discover the Expert Speaker Podcast and so more people can be empowered to share their message. Be sure to go to www.expertspeaker.com and take the masterclass to learn how to grow your business and make money speaking. It's totally free and will change your business. If you're ready to work with Expert Speaker, you can apply. Just go to expertspeaker.com/apply and someone from our team will be in touch with you to help you grow your business with public speaking. That's expertspeaker.com/apply. We'll see you in the next episode.